The memory crystal shattered with a sound like a dying star. Lyra's three-fingered hand, its skin the pale blue of a twilight sky, hovered in the air where the crystal had been, trembling. Shards of iridescent glass, each one holding a frozen fragment of a laugh, a whispered promise, a touch, now lay scattered across the polished black floor of the orbital observatory deck. Around her, the panoramic viewport displayed the impossible beauty of the Galilean jewel, the colossal, man-made ring habitat orbiting Jupiter, its internal biomes forming a tapestry of swirling blues and greens against the infinite star-flecked black. But for Lyra, the universe had just collapsed into those jagged pieces at her feet. Her large, luminous silver eyes, once described by Kalin as holding the light of captured moons, were wide with a horror that was slowly draining into a profound, silent emptiness. The final holographic echo of Kalin's face, his handsome human features, his warm smile that didn't reach his calculating eyes flickered once above the largest. Chardon vanished. He was gone. The date, the culmination of 6 months of clandestine meetings between a Zorathi refugee and a son of the Galactic Council's human envoy, had been a lie. A meticulously staged performance. He hadn't come to confess his love as the Terran drama suggested. He had come to retrieve the data chip she'd naively borrowed from the archive, to whisper that their peoples could never truly connect, and to walk away, his duty to his family's political standing done. The chill of the void, deeper than the thermal shielding could ever mitigate, seeped through her thin ceremonial silks and into her bones. She was alone, more alone than when she'd fled the smoldering ruins of Zorath. There the loneliness had been filled with terror and purpose survive. Here in this gilded cage of human ingenuity, the loneliness was a vast hollow quiet, and it was all that was left. Before we continue, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and tell us in the comments where you are watching this video from. We always read every message. The Galilean jewel was humanity's proudest achievement, a Stanford torus habitat of staggering scale, a self-sustaining arc of Earth's biomes and ambitions, tethered to the resource-rich moons of Jupiter. Its spokes reached out like the arms of a deity, its rim a land of artificial sunsets and curated forests, of bustling arcologies and floating parks. To humans, it was a testament to their resilience after the Earth-Mars Civil War. To Lyra, and the few thousand Zorathi refugees granted provisional cohabitation status, it was a beautiful prison. Lyra's people were telepaths, not mind readers but emotional resonators. They sensed the shape and weight of the feelings around them, a constant whispering symphony of joy, fear, love, and anger. On Zorath it created a society of profound harmony and subtle artistry. Here, amidst the dense, roaring static of human emotion, a species whose feelings were blisteringly intense, wildly chaotic, and often masterfully hidden, it was a form of perpetual, exquisite torture. She wore a damper band on her wrist, a crude human tech solution that muffled the psychic noise to a bearable thrum, but it also muted her own sense of self, leaving her feeling wrapped in thick gauze. She lived in the Zen Quarter, a sector of the jewel that was functionally a ghetto, though the official maps called it the Cultural Integration Zone. The architecture here was a clumsy attempt at Zorathi design, sweeping curves and organic forms rendered in cold, prefabricated polymer. The light was wrong, too harsh, lacking the gentle diffusion of Zorath's twin suns. Her work was in the Central Archive, a vault of knowledge that stretched for miles. Her human supervisors valued her people's eidetic memory for pattern recognition, useful for sorting digital debris from the Great War. She was a living scanner, a curator of ruins. It was numb, silent work, perfect for someone trying to disappear into the background. Her personal struggle was a quiet one, the struggle not to feel. The damper helped, but it couldn't block the memories. The shriek of orbital plasma burning through her city's spires. The crushing wave of panic from her people. A psychic tsunami that had nearly unmade her mind before the evacuation ships launched. And now the cold surgical shame of Kalin's betrayal. He had been a respite, a focused warm signal in the chaotic human noise, or so she had thought. Now she understood his emotional signature had been as rehearsed as his words. As she numbly cleaned up the shards of the memory crystal, a precious, irreplaceable piece of home, a new signal brushed against her muted senses. It was not from the observatory. It was distant, filtered through layers of habitat plating but distinct. It was a deep, resonant ache, wrapped in a fierce, protective determination. It felt like gravity. Unlike Kalen's polished charm, this emotion was raw, unvarnished, and real. It was the first real thing she'd felt in weeks. It pulled at her, a faint, sorrowful tune in the discordant symphony of the jewel. The source of the signal was in a mid-rim public garden, a terraced slice of alpine meadow under a projected sky of gentle blue. And there, Lyra saw him. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with the tired posture of someone who carried weight that wasn't physical. His hair was cropped short, gray streaking the temples. He wore the practical jumpsuit of a maintenance engineer, but his hands, currently gently guiding a small, wobbly drone, were careful. The ache she felt emanated from him, a core of profound grief, but layered over it, bright and vibrant as a solar flare, was his focus on the child beside him. Mira was a human girl of about 7, her legs encased in sleek white mobility exoskeletons. Her face was a mask of intense concentration as she manipulated a holopad, trying to steer the little gardening drone. "It's not listening, Dad," she cried, frustration in her voice. "It's listening, Sprout," the man said, his voice a low, calm rumble. "Its guidance array is just old, like your old man. You have to be patient. Gentle pressure, see?" He placed his hand over hers on the pad. The drone, carrying a seedling, steadied and lowered itself into a prepared plot of soil. The wave of triumph from Mira, and the answering surge of pure, unadulterated love from her father, was so potent it briefly pierced through Lyra's damper. It was a warmth so intense it felt like standing in sunlight after years in the cold. It stole her breath. She watched them, hidden by a trellis of engineered ivy. She learned their routine over the next few days. The man was Elias Vance. He came here with Mira every afternoon after her physical therapy. He was a veteran of the Earth-Mars War, now a senior systems engineer for the Joule's gravity calibration grid. His wife, Mira's mother, had been a botanist on the Joule. She had died during a catastrophic pressure leak in the biodomes 2 years prior. The accident had also injured Mira's spine. The grief was his constant companion, but his love for his daughter was the engine that moved him through it. Lyra found herself drawn to this garden, to this quiet pocket of raw, honest emotion. She began to arrive earlier, tending to a small, neglected plot, assigned to her people, a plot where earth flowers wilted under her care, unable to thrive in the atmosphere she preferred. One afternoon, Mira's drone, overcorrecting, veered wildly and smacked into Lyra's plot, scattering soil and the fragile remains of a Terran rose. "Oh no," Mira gasped. Elias was up in an instant. "I'm so sorry," he said, hurrying over. His eyes, the color of weathered steel, took in Lyra, her Zorathy features, her damper band, the dead flowers. She felt his initial flash of surprise, then a quick, deliberate suppression of pity, replaced by genuine apology. "Her drone's been glitchy. Let me help clean this up." Lyra shook her head, her voice soft from disuse. "It is unnecessary." They were not thriving. Mira hobbled over, her exos whirring softly. She stared up at Lyra with unblinking curiosity. "Your skin is blue. That's pretty. Why are your flowers all dead?" "Mira," Elias chided gently. "It is a fair question," Lyra said, kneeling to Mira's level, the movement instinctively non-threatening. "The soil here is made for earth plants. They miss their sun. My people's plants would miss different things." "Like what?" Mira asked. "Softer light, a different song in the air." Lyra hesitated, then did something she hadn't done since arriving. She dialed her damper down, just a fraction, and let a tiny, controlled thread of her own longing for the scent of Zorathy moss, for the gentle psychic hum of home, filter out. Mira's eyes widened. I feel sad, but nice sad. Like remembering a good dream?" Elias looked between them, confused. He hadn't felt it, of course, but he saw his daughter's reaction. A protective stiffness entered his shoulders. "Come on, Sprout. Let's let her get back to her work." But the connection was made. The next day, Mira waved at her. The day after, she asked her father if the nice blue lady could help them with the drone, which was being stupid again. Elias, cautious but seeing no malice in Lyra, only a deep, quiet sadness that resonated with his own, reluctantly agreed. Lyra, with her innate understanding of delicate systems and harmonic balances, calibrated the drone's motivators in seconds. It hummed to life, perfectly stable. How'd you do that? Elias asked, impressed despite himself. All systems sing a song of their function, Lyra said quietly. This one's song was out of tune. Elias's emotional signature shifted. The constant background grief was still there, but now a thread of curiosity, of professional respect wove through it. He began to ask hesitant questions about Zarathi engineering principles. Lyra, starved for any genuine interaction, answered in her precise melodic voice. They talked of gravity fields and ecological balances. Mira played with the now obedient drone, bathing them both in bursts of simple joy. Lyra started to live for those hours in the garden. The powerful, clean signal of Elias's devotion to Mira was a balm, and Elias, in turn, found a strange peace in Lyra's presence. She didn't fill the silence with empty chatter. She didn't offer platitudes about his loss. She just was, and in her large silver eyes he saw an understanding of pain that went beyond words. One evening, as a simulated sunset painted the garden in oranges and purples, Mira fell asleep on a bench, her head in her father's lap. Elias stroked her hair, his love a palpable force. You feel it, don't you? He said softly, not looking at Lyra. What she means to me, Kalen's family. They warned me about your people. Said you could manipulate emotions. Lyra flinched. We do not manipulate. We resonate. We perceive. What you feel for her? It is the loudest, truest song in this sector. It is not something that can be fabricated. He met her eyes then. Kalen used you. For that data chip. I heard the gossip in the engineering corps. I'm sorry. The acknowledgement of her pain, from this human, was a kindness that cracked something open inside her. A single shimmering tear like liquid mercury traced down her cheek. You are the first to say that. Elias nodded, his own throat tight. The war. It taught me to see past species. To see people. You're good with her, with the machines. You should come by the house sometime. I've got a balcony that gets weird light. Maybe your not earth plants might like it. It was a tentative offer. A bridge made of grief and gentleness. And for the first time since the memory crystal shattered, Lyra felt a flicker of something that wasn't desolation. It was fragile and it was frightening. But it was hope. The balcony of Elias's modular unit did get weird light, a refracted glow from the jewels. Centrifugal lighting strips that, through a filter of atmospheric condensate, sometimes mimicked the diffuse quality of Zorath's suns. In small hydroponic trays, Lyra nurtured cuttings she'd secreted from the Zen, quarters-failing communal garden. Silvery tendrils of whisper moss unfurled. A memory bell vine grew, its glass-like buds chiming softly in frequencies only she could fully appreciate. It became a sanctuary. Lyra would visit after her archive shifts. She'd help Mira with her neural exo interface exercises, her telepathic sense allowing her to guide the girl's focus with subtle emotional cues, speeding her progress dramatically. She'd share simple meals with Elias, talking of small things. The haunting emptiness in her chest began, slowly, to fill with the mundane, precious texture of found family. One night, as a real-time feed of Jupiter's stormy face dominated the viewport, Mira was asleep and Elias was repairing a faulty recycler node. Lyra, her damper off in the safety of this space, sensed a spike of frustration from him, laced with a sudden, sharp fear. This node, he muttered, holding a crystalline data core up to the light. It's from the biodome sector, the same series that failed the night of the accident. Lyra felt the storm of his grief rise, jagged and fresh. She moved to sit beside him. You suspect it was not an accident. He looked haunted. The official report said cascading systems failure. But the failsafes, I designed some of those subsystems. They shouldn't have all gone. I've been quietly pulling decommissioned parts for years, trying to find a pattern. He handed her the core. My clearance only gets me so far. But the archive, you see raw data streams, don't you? Unfiltered logs. Lyra took the core, feeling its cold weight. She felt his desperate hope, his burning need for truth, warring with his fear of dragging her into his danger. You wish for me to look. I can't ask you to do that, Lyra. It's a huge risk. If Kalen's family found out you were accessing sealed incident logs, you did not ask, she said softly. You shared your truth. That is a different thing. The next day, in the silent, cavernous depths of the central archive, Lyra did the unthinkable. Using her curator's codes and a sliver of Zarathi synaptic tech she'd kept hidden. She ghosted into the deep servers. She bypassed the official report and dove into the river of raw, sensor data from Biodome 7, 2 years, 3 months, and 14 days prior. The data was a chaotic scream of pressure alerts, oxygen readouts, and structural stress. But to her pattern-sensitive mind, it wasn't chaos. It was a composition, and one note was off. Terribly off. A series of gravity regulator pulses microseconds long, originating not from the dome's main grid, but from a secondary, military-grade calibration array used for stabilizing sensitive research. The pulses were perfectly timed to induce a resonant frequency in the dome's primary support column, a column that had been secretly alloyed with a cheaper, more brittle composite during its rushed construction, a fact buried in procurement logs owned by. Her blood ran cold. Vance Corp, Elias's family, his late father's company now run by his uncle, Armin Vance, a major contractor for the jewel. The accident was sabotage, a targeted, deliberate act to cause a catastrophic failure. To cover up what? She cross-referenced. The only unique project in Biodome 7 that day was a classified botanical research, led by Dr. Anya Vance, Elias's wife. She was working on a hybrid, a bioengineered plant, designed to metabolize toxic radiation and produce a stabilizing compound for long jump warp cores, a project that could have ended the lucrative monopoly of synthetic stabilizers produced by another Vance Corp subsidiary. Lyra's mind reeled. Anya hadn't died in an accident. She had been murdered by her own family to protect profit, and Mira's injury, collateral damage. She was pulling the evidence together when a new presence entered the archive's digital vault. Not a person, a hunting algorithm, sleek and lethal, a corporate trace program. It had sensed her ghost access. It locked onto her synaptic signature and began to unravel her path. A digital predator shooting back through the data streams toward her. She severed the connection with a psychic snap that felt like tearing her own nerves. She stumbled back from the interface terminal, her silver eyes wide with terror. They knew. Someone knew she was looking. She fled the archive, her heart a drum in her chest. She had to get to Elias, she had to tell him. But as she neared the mid-rim residential spokes, she saw them. 2 men in the unmarked black uniforms of corporate security, standing outside Elias's unit. Their emotional signatures were flat, cold, professional. Waiting. Lyra ducked into a service alley, panic a metallic taste in her mouth. They were watching his home. If she went to him, she would lead them right to the evidence in her mind. She accessed a public comm terminal, her fingers trembling. She called Elias's private line. His face appeared, concern immediately etching his features as he saw her fear. Lyra, what's wrong? Listen, she whispered, her voice urgent. The accident. It was no accident. Your uncle, the company, Anya's research threatened their profits. They induced a resonance failure in the dome. She saw his face bleach of all color, saw the devastating truth strike him like a physical blow. I have the data pattern, but they have a trace. They're at your door, Elias. You and Mira are not safe. Where are you? He demanded, his voice low and fierce. I cannot come to you. They will capture the data from me. I have to run. No, Lyra, wait. The whisper moss on your balcony, she said, tears flowing freely now. When it glows silver, it means it feels love. It has been glowing every day since I brought it there. Keep Mira safe, Elias, keep her safe. She ended the transmission, wiping the terminal. The world was suddenly a hunting ground. The warm sanctuary of the garden, the quiet moments on the balcony, the hopeful future all shattered. The twist was not just a revelation of murder and greed. It was a cruel inversion of her newfound home. The family she had begun to trust was the very source of the poison that had killed Elias's wife and now threatened his daughter. And she, the outsider, carried the proof that could destroy them or get her, and her newfound family killed. Lyra became a ghost in the machine of the jewel. She slept in empty cargo pods, her damper at full strength to mute the terrifying hunt. She felt pulsing through the station's security networks. The cold, efficient anxiety of the corporate hunters was a constant, prickling static at the edge of her perception. She missed the garden with a physical ache. She missed Mira's bright, untroubled joy. She missed Elias's steady gravitational presence. For Elias, the revelation was an atom bomb in his soul. The grief he had carried, the pain he had learned to move through, was now laced with a venomous rage. His uncle. The family dinners. The condolences. All a lie. He looked at Mira, practicing her walking with fierce determination, and saw not just his daughter but a target. His protectiveness morphed into something harder, more desperate. He couldn't go to the official. Authorities, Vance Corp influence, reached too deep into the Jewel's administration. He was an engineer, not a soldier. But he had a soldier's knowledge of the Jewel's bones, its maintenance shafts, its blind spots in the sensor grid, its archaic, hardwired emergency systems that predated corporate firewalls. He also had Lyra's data. Before she fled, she had managed to pulse a compressed burst of the key evidence, the anomalous gravity pulse signatures, to a secure, offline node in his engineering workshop. It was the sword, but he needed the shield. He needed to get Mira to absolute safety before he could wield it. He found Lyra 3 days later. He used a forgotten maintenance protocol to create a power fluctuation in the sector where he'd last sensed the corporate search patterns focusing, a subtle signal only someone who knew systems like a song would recognize. He found her huddled behind a fusion manifold in sub-level thermos, shivering, her silk stained with coolant. When she saw him, her silver eyes flooded with relief and fresh fear. "You should not have come. They are everywhere." "I know," he said, his voice rough. He opened a pack he carried. "I brought you a thermos, real tea, and a fresh damper cell." It was such a profoundly practical, caring gesture that it broke through her terror. She took the thermos, the warmth seeping into her blue hands. "Mira," she asked, her voice small. "With a friend. A pilot I served with. She's prepping a ship." Elias knelt before her, his steel gray eyes holding hers. "I can't fight this war from inside the Jewel. Lyra, I need to get Mira to the independent colonies past the Saturn fringe. But to do that, I need to create one hell of a distraction. And I need to broadcast that evidence on every channel in the Sol system so they can't just silence us. What is your plan?" she whispered. "The gravity calibration grid," he said, "my grid. I can turn it into a broadcast antenna of unimaginable power. But to do it, I need to manually override the master control hub in the central spire. It's the most secure location on the station." Lyra understood. "It was a suicide run. They will be waiting for you." "Probably. But I know the hub systems better than anyone alive." And he reached out, a hesitant human gesture, and placed his hand over her 3-fingered one. "I need you. Not just for the data. I need your sense. Your ability to feel where they are, what they're feeling. To be my lookout in a way no sensor can." He was asking her to walk into the heart of the danger. But he was also asking her to stand with him, to fight. Not as a tool or a refugee, but as a partner. The warmth of his hand. The trust in his emotional signature. A turbulent mix of fury, fear, and unshakable resolve filled the hollow spaces Kalen's betrayal had carved. "My people are peaceful," she said. "We fled our war. I do not know how to fight." "You're not fighting a war," Elias said, his grip tightening. "You're protecting your family." The word landed with the force of a truth she had been afraid to name. She looked at their joined hands, the human hand, scarred and strong, and her own, slender and blue. Different worlds, same song. She nodded. "Then we protect our family." The next hours were a tapestry of quiet moments strung on a wire of tension. In the hidden workshop, Elias showed her the schematics. Lyra, with her eidetic memory, absorbed every detail. She practiced dialing her damper, not to mute the world, but to focus it, to stretch her sense down corridors, through bulkheads, feeling for the cold signatures of the corporate hunters, the nervous energy of regular security, the blank spots that might be surveillance drones. At one point, as Elias tested a jury-rigged data spike, he spoke without looking up. "After Anya died, I thought I'd never feel purpose again. Just a duty to see Mira grow. Then you came, with your dead flowers and your quiet, and you made me remember there are still good, true things worth fighting for. Not for revenge, for the future." Lyra, tending to a tiny sprig of whisper moss she'd kept in her pocket, watched it amid a soft, steady silver glow. "You gave me a home when I was adrift in the stars. You and Mira, I will fight for that home. For both of you." It was a vow, spoken in the language of a telepath and a soldier. And in that moment, the emotional bond between them solidified into something unbreakable. It wasn't romantic love, it was deeper. Forged in shared loss, forged in the fierce. chosen commitment to protect their shattered, cobbled-together family. They were two broken people, from two broken worlds, and together, they were whole enough to be brave. The central spire was the neural stem of the Galilean jewel. Its access tube was a vertical shaft of humming, light and crystalline data lines, rising through the heart of the station. Elias and Lyra, clad in stolen maintenance gear, ascended in a service lift, their tools hiding the data spike and weapons. Lyra's senses were stretched thin. 3 levels above, she whispered, her eyes closed. Anxiety, focus, they are stationary. A checkpoint. Elias diverted the lift, exiting 2 levels early. They moved through maintenance crawlways, Lyra guiding them around pockets of waiting security. She could feel the hunters now, a focused, predatory patience centered on the master hub itself. They are there, Elias, 5, maybe 6. They know. They're expecting a veteran trying to brute force his way in. Elias murmured, opening a panel to reveal a nest of glowing, outdated fiber optic cables. They're not expecting a ghost in the wires. He spliced in a portable terminal. I can trigger a full system diagnostic from here. It'll cause a localized gravity wobble for 90 seconds. Lights will flicker. It'll draw their attention to the eastern conduit. That's our window to the west entrance. I can feel the wobble. In the emotional field. It will unsettle them, Lyra confirmed. On my mark. His fingers flew over the keys. Now. A deep subauditory thrum vibrated through the spire. The lights dipped. From their hiding place, they heard a sharp command and the reorientation of the waiting team. Go! They burst from the crawlway into the sterile, white chamber of the master hub, a circular room dominated by a colossal, crystalline control core. 4 corporate hunters in black armor spun, rifles rising. But Elias was already moving, not toward them, but toward a seemingly decorative column. He slammed the data spike into a hidden port. Lyra didn't fight. She felt. She dialed her damper to 0 and opened herself completely, unleashing a raw, unfiltered wave of the emotions she had absorbed. The terror of her people's bombardment, the crushing betrayal by Kalen, the soul-deep grief of Elias, the pure, defiant love for Mira. It was a psychic scream, a storm of anguish and love that washed over the hunters. These were men conditioned for combat, not for an empathic assault. They staggered, their cold focus shattered by the direct injection of alien, despair and human heartbreak. One clutched his head. Another fired wild shots into the ceiling. It bought Elias the seconds he needed. The spike interfaced. Hollow screens erupted around the room, displaying as evidence the damning gravity pulses, the corrupted procurement logs, the financial trails linking Armin Vance to the cover-up. With a final, decisive command, Elias rerouted all non-essential power from the jewel's gravity grid, channeling it into the spire. The entire station groaned. Artificial gravity fluctuated, a sickening lurch that sent everyone to their knees. The central spire, designed to manage gravity, was now a titanic broadcast dish. Elias's evidence, his testimony, and a single line, for Anya, for all they silence, was pulsed out in a gravity wave burst that would ripple through every ship, every colony, every listening post in the Sol system. It was unstoppable. An alarm blared, a new, more urgent signal. Containment breach in the reactor core, a synthesized voice announced. Armin Vance's final scorched earth order. Frame the rogue veteran and his alien accomplice for a station-wide meltdown. Red emergency lights bathed the hub. The hunters, recovering, leveled their rifles. Elias stood before the core, shielding Lyra. The data is gone. It's out, he roared. The lead hunter's finger tightened on the trigger. Lyra, from behind Elias, saw it. She felt his intent, a cold final resolve. In that split second, she didn't think. She acted. With a strength born of desperation, she shoved Elias aside and stepped forward, her arms wide, placing herself between the rifles and the man who had become her family. The shots were deafening in the enclosed space, but they were not the sharp crack of pulse rifles. They were the heavier thump of station security stun rounds. The corporate hunters crumpled. Behind them, in the doorway, stood a squad of Jewel security, led by a grim-faced captain, and beside him, held securely by a woman in pilot's leathers, was Mira. The broadcast reached Security HQ 2. Vance, the captain said, looking at Elias with new respect. We intercepted these guys on the way to the reactor. Your pilot friend brought the girl. Seemed she had something to say. Mira's face was streaked with tears, but her jaw was set. She looked at her father, then at Lyra. "I told them," Mira said, her voice clear and strong. "I told them the Blue Lady is family. And family doesn't run." The corporate hunters were disarmed. The false reactor alert was being neutralized. The evidence was singing across the solar system. The immediate fight was over. One standard month later. The view was different now. Not a balcony, but the observation deck of a sturdy, independent freighter, the Starward Heart, owned by Elias's pilot friend. Jupiter hung in the black, a banded marble of storms. The Galilean jewel a distant, glittering ring beside it, a place of both pain and salvation. Inside the ship's small, warm mess hall, Mira practiced walking without her exos, taking 3 shaky, triumphant steps into Lyra's waiting arms before collapsing into giggles. The whisper moss, now in a planter bolted to the wall, glowed a constant, contented silver. Elias leaned against the doorway, watching them. The deep ache of Anya's loss would never leave, but it was now integrated, a part of him, not a wound that defined him. The public outcry from the broadcast had triggered a dozen investigations. Armin Vance and his inner circle were in custody, their empire crumbling. The Zarathi refugee status was under review, with Lyra's bravery cited in the petitions. He was a free man. They were a free family, bound not by blood but by choice and sacrifice. Lyra caught his eye and smiled, a true, unburdened smile that reached her luminous silver eyes. She no longer wore the damper band. Here, with just Elias and Mira, the emotional symphony was simple, beautiful, and theirs. He walked over, handing her a steaming mug. "What's the ship feel like today?" he asked. It was their ritual. Her sense of the Starward Heart's moods, the creak of its hull, the hum of its engines, the quiet satisfaction of its AI was better than any diagnostic. "She feels hopeful," Lyra said, sipping the tea, "and a little curious about the Saturn fringe." "We all are," Elias said, putting an arm around Mira as she hugged his leg. They were headed for the independent colonies, a place with no ghettos, no corporate shadows, a place to build a new life. As Lyra looked at the stars streaming past the viewport, she felt a final, gentle chime from the memory bell vine she'd saved. It was a faint, echoing tone from the direction of the jewel, a tone of gratitude, of a debt remembered. It made her think of the other Zarathi, still in the Zen quarter, of the other hidden truth still buried in the jewel's archive. Their fight was over, but the larger story of the jewel, of human and Zarathi coexistence, was just beginning. And perhaps someday, from their new home among the stars, they might find a way to help write the next chapter. For now, though, there was only the steady hum of the ship, the warm weight of Mira's head against her side, and the quiet, steadfast presence of the human dad who had stepped into her shattered life and helped her piece it back together, into something more beautiful than it had ever been before.